Sorry, I think we're on, but
Yes, we are.
okay, good, because hi everybody. I'm just switching to our channel because somehow it didn't go that way for me. And
Yes, we.
there we go. And I have the chat up, which I don't normally do if anyone would like to come on. Um, so I'm a little bit in a let it rip. Well, no, I'm not in a little bit let it rip. I'm in a really big let it rip moment for me. And I don't know how to do it well. And usually after years of being with human beings and learning how to frame things within which human beings can take in information, I don't really think I have a way to frame this because it's so at the core root of what separates humanity from itself. The very mechanism that, good morning, ladies, the very mechanism that separates humanity from itself is what's listening. It's part of our listening. It actually is what stops us from being directly related to ourselves. So when I'm in one of these dragon moments, which I am for sure, when I'm in one of these, it sounds like I'm making humanity wrong. I'm not. I, but there is a time you want to give up. Those of us that are paying attention to things that once it created paradise here, that could create paradise again. There are times you just want to give up, frankly. It's like enough already. Go take your toys and go home. And yesterday I watched a 3 hour, I couldn't stop watching it. It's called the Joe Rogan Experience, and Terrence Howard was on it. He's an actor, but he also has 97 patents, and uh, and he remembers. And those patents would do things like they would have free energy. They would be able, and he talked about the breath in and the breath out and the yin and the yang, but he talked about it from a scientific point of view. And they both are very learned men, very aware. This wasn't conspiracy theory. This is did their due diligence and did their research. And then how when he tried to he presented his work, which is just brilliant, about as a scientist, he was so labeled as a actor that an actor's not supposed to be a scientist. They can be a politician, but they can't be a scientist. And nobody listened. And he had gotten Robert Downey Jr. His role as the Iron Man. And when he asked Robert Downey Jr. for help, uh, he turned his back on him. So it's not about Robert Downey Jr. It's not about it's not about people. It's about the condition our condition is in. And I've been having a really rough time on our personal field of Tantra Mat thread, not because anything's wrong with the people, but because we've got to get our minds back. We've got to realize our mind is evolving, but one of the key elements of that evolution is to find our own mind. Literally, I don't care what level you're talking about. I don't know if you're talking about as a secular human being, if you're talking about it psychologically, if you're talking about it spiritually, we've got to get our mind back. And there's some really good material, one of which was this interview on our WhatsApp thread. But people talked about it and them. They didn't talk about how their capacity to take in the information and what they recognized about themselves in that information. So this project that a few of us, and mainly Janice and I and Deb and Liz, when she can, she's at camp now. It's just this really crisis moment in the mind of human being. Not in the society of human being, it's tanking. But in the mind of human being, at some point, a human being has to get their own genius, has to get their own ability to take in information that resonates with them and has them exist as whole, not to take in information to save their butt. Remember this guy named Jesus? He had a quote, and the quote was, "No more self-sacrifice," which means we return to a self. We get ourselves back, and where we know we're back is in our mind. In our mind. So one of the struggles I've had, because we're now deeply embedded in the Magician of Self research project that many of us are doing. One of the things that's so challenging is the responses to these really great videos, because it's about the video, it's about the person who's doing the video. It's not about the what we know about ourselves and what we can reflect on about ourselves in watching those videos. And then the other piece that's always been hard. I was given the creation templates, I think in 2009. And they were given to me for this time because they restore the harmonic nature of the mind. They restore the resonant nature of the mind. But people are more drawn to watch these videos, more drawn to get their to-do list done it's not an attractor. It's something mechanized in the human mind, in the human mental perception. We got our experiential mind, that's our sentience. We've got our empathic response. If you've read my book, You as the Mind of Creation. And so those work fine, but when it comes to the mental perception, there's this overlay that has us look to others for information and say, oh yeah, that's the information I was looking for, not having the neural pathways that realizes that we are the forming of that information, that information would not be coming to us if we weren't part of the information itself, if we weren't part of the activity of the information itself. And Terrence Howard he has 97 patents, and what he talked about, I know about. And we actually have at our fingertips to create a new world, a world that's based on harmony, balance, symmetry, proportion, beauty, grace, Mat, basically, it's the principles of Mat. We have the ability to restore our so above, so below. It's all over the place now, but it's going to take the everyday human being craving that, and wanting to restore their own direct link with creation to achieve it. So I came into this call this morning with a real strong, I want to take my toys and go home. Just enough already. And I have enculturated the people in the field of Tantra Mat with my huge dragon self. I have enculturated people on behalf of what gives them life and has them exist as whole. And even in not just mine, but in other fields of endeavor, there is this challenge because we're still not inwardly informed. In other words, we're not looking from the inside, reflecting from the inside out. We're looking from the outside, reflecting the outside in, and it's not going to work. And we're reaching a critical edge. And unfortunately, humanity won't even know it. Humanity won't even know that everything was available. And I think that's what tanked me yesterday, was everything is available now. But humanity has to want it and say they don't want the other anymore. And Janice, you really said something. Well, you want to, sorry to throw it on your hot plate on your lap, but I mean, you actually said that at some point we have to say
Enough.
over to you.
Yeah. At some point we have to say enough, because I mean, there's the reality that we are that we in our human body, we're animals, right? We're animals, we're part of the ecosystem, but the sort of the animal nature of ourselves, we evolved inside tribes. And so we have this very strong programming to not do anything to piss off the tribe, because then we get kicked out and, the saber-toothed tiger comes to eat us. And it's, and I think really what's before us is being able to hold the paradox of, I'm scared shitless to get kicked out of my tribe, and my tribe needs to hear the truth that I need to say. And my tribe says this, and I'm saying enough to that, or their tribe says this, and I'm saying whatever. But I mean, I'll give the example that I was sharing earlier. So back in 2021, I wrote a one-woman show, and I've performed it a number of times, and it was really a step out of my comfort zone. I mean, I've been acting for 40 years, but I'd never written a show and performed a show that was me being me. I've never done that before. And I had to learn all of this. I dread marketing, and so I'm having to work through all of my stuff around putting it out on Facebook, and I just have, every time I think about mounting the show again, I go through these waves of, the show's not good enough, it's not really, it's just my show, who cares, blah 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 blah. And I know damn well that all of that is not creation speaking to me. That is all of the enculturation of my society that's speaking to me. And every time I go through that, something will happen. I will have a conversation with a single person where I realize, oh my God, that is why I need to do my show. That is why I need to be putting this. And it just happened to me again this week. I was on a coaching call, and I had a conversation with someone, and I'm like, oh my God, because she said to me, it's just so hard being a woman. And I'm like, yup. And that is what my show is about. I mean, I don't expect to get America Ferrara, monologue status from Barbie, but I have something to say. And one of the ways that I can be a stand for the new world is to say it, whether I have 5 people in my audience, or 2 people in my audience, or no people in my audience, and I'm just talking to an empty room,
or a million,
right? But that is a choice that is in my life and in my purview to make, and I make it. And so those of you that may be familiar with Harrison Butker and what he shared at the graduation ceremony, I now have a tagline on my show that says, the show Harrison Butker doesn't want you to see. Because like Tantra, I can be pretty dragon-esque myself. And is it going to piss people off? I'm sure, but pardon my French, who gives a fuck? I mean, it's we have an opportunity in front of us right now to take a stand for how we know paradise on earth can exist. And when we find ourselves at the end of this life, waiting for the next one, whatever, we're going to have to be with whether or not we took territory. And that's what Tantra's always saying. We might not get there, but let's take some damn territory. And I think that's what we're talking about today. Take the territory you can take, because then at least you know that you've done that. And every time you do that, the people standing around you go, oh, look at that. Somebody took some territory. I guess I could take some territory. And that's how it happens, people.
I want to jump in, because even for the people who don't have that conscious awareness, even for the ones who want you just calm down, Janice, just calm down. Whatever their version is, I'm being kind of snotty, but
no, that's pretty accurate, Deb. That's pretty damn accurate.
But there's some in the middle there too, is what I was trying to get at. And right. Even if they're not aware of, oh, she took territory, just go by physics and systems theory. Piece of the system changes, it impacts the whole system. And that's not easy. That's not easy when there's not, I don't understand phenomenon of recognition. Not really. I do on one superficial intellectual level. But what is it about recognition and validation that is important and difficult to operate in the absence of? But I was also struck by, you said, even if I have only 2 people in the audience, but you didn't say the other side of the numbers, you know? And because there's something, that's an aspect of mind. Now, I haven't watched the video yet, but from what Tantra and Janice were sharing, and I've always admired Terrence Howard as an actor. He just seems so
Real.
real. Yes.
So real.
So in my mind, he has some capacity to tolerate and the not recognition and still be and do what he knows to be and do and make available and keep pushing on. Will this ignite something? Will this ignite something? And that's
He also complained.
good.
The part that I thought was so fascinating about it, the 2 of them complained. And I think
Good.
that's what kind of lit my pipes this morning.
Yeah.
Is that Jesus, I'd shake people to do the creation templates. I shake people to read You as the Mind of Creation. But not because I love what you said, Deb, not because I want recognition. What was the other one? Or approval. There was another word you used, which is brilliant, but I can't remember it. Maybe somebody will write it in the chat. But I don't, that's not it. And
No.
he doesn't want recognition or approval. But the other thing was amazing is he's a strategist, 97 patents. So whenever he has one patent that he patented as a weapon, so no one can use it as a weapon because he is the only one that can say that it can be used that way.
And if he's already died by this time somebody is like catching on, then it goes to someone, whoever he designates as can be trusted around that patent.
Yeah.
So that's very strategic because there's
right.
many people.
Yeah, and I think
Sorry.
that's something missing in our psyche, that we're so downtrodden by the incredible unworkability, the incredible loss of the human mind. It breaks my heart, the loss of a human being in their mind, that they identify with their thoughts, that they don't really know that their thoughts are thinking them. And they do, and that thing, Janice, you said about it's what's ours to do is ours to do. There's no way around that. But this mechanized, yeah, but who do you think you are? And only 2 people will be. I mean, you did a brilliant job of it. That's a mechanized mind. That's not Janice.
Right.
That's not me. And that he keeps going. And he even said to Joe Rogan, he even said, "Get me in the door with what's his name? What's the guy
Elon Musk?
Elon, get me in the door with Elon Musk or the other guy." And he said, "Well, I don't know him, but I do know him. And yep, I'll see if I can get you in the door." So there's an unstoppability in the face of huge obstacles that are trying to stop it. Even if it's someone, I don't know if I can put it in language. There's just a situation I know about, and that part of us that just doesn't know how to say, "Sorry, but this is what's real for me. And I'm going to keep interacting with you from what's real for me," which is that everything's meant to love. Everything's meant to be harmonic. Everything's meant to operate on behalf of life. And it looks like I'm promoting it, but actually I'm just giving it a place. And this is the crucial edge. Something must be going on. First of all, that I felt heaven bent to talk about we must grab hold of our own evolution. And I do think it's what you all are saying, regardless of recognition, regardless of the other listening. But we know we're evolving. We talk about it.
Right.
We actually talk about what we're shocked by and what we're noticing. And we're watching our Neanderthalness, Cro-Magnon us, and it's actually incredibly exciting. And I don't know how you can do it without interactive relationships. I don't know how you can do it without interactive relating.
Well, I've got a couple of ideas.
You go right ahead.
I said before we got on, first, sorry. As usual, I'm trying to say 5 things at once. So, you said something about using the templates earlier, and I want to talk about the reverse. Because I watched a video that was posted on our WhatsApp thread, and there was information or presentation, I think I want to say, that was like, oh, so I used the templates to access that part of my mind and being. I could feel the of it, but I knew it wasn't just information, like data, like intellect. So I used the templates the other direction from what you're saying to see what was it that got pinged or awakened, or what's the connection, what's the do I want to say connect the dots? I don't know, something like that.
Well,
What
connect
is
your
that?
dots, connect your neural
My
pathways.
dots.
Yeah, connect your neural pathways. Yeah.
That activated some kind of connectivity beyond my already existing thinking and cognition. And I like that we use the term cognition, because that opens it up to all of the mind, not just the intellect functioning. So that's one thing. Another is that it's not possible to engage with what Tantra is saying without addressing your comfort zones. It ain't gonna happen. It just isn't gonna happen. There's times I so wish when I was doing my schooling, as with everybody, you have to choose a track. You can't learn everything all at once. You just can't. I can't, for sure. And so I didn't choose the body mind tract. I didn't do that. But I'm so present to, I was really into the transpersonal and still am. And I do think they're highly related. But because what I'm discovering now is that as I keep going towards everything Tantra and Janice mentioned, there are physical and circumstantial impacts. Not necessarily bad, but there have been times that the way things were crumbles because my cognition advanced, and the structure that comes from, I can't do this scientifically, so everybody's going to have to grok, and then I welcome the input to teach me that webbing. As your cognition advances, then structures that are in place have to change because you can't separate them. Janice, can I pick on you a little bit?
Sure.
If Janice hit the comfort zone or pushed on her comfort zone that had her not say 100,000, 10,000, a million viewers, and because I've watched her, she graced me with a video of her one woman show, and I'm telling you, holy moly, that was so empowering and awakened aspects of being I hadn't thought of, but also mostly validated so much that I either felt alone in or had just pushed aside because what are you going to do? Well, that's gone. The what are you going to do is gone because of her show. And it was fun and interesting and entertaining. But if she pushed on that comfort zone, the shift, I don't know how to do this. It happened, it was clear in my brain, but making it come out in words is not working. The shift when she has 10,000 people in an audience, or I don't know what theaters can hold. It depends on the theater, I guess. 5,000, 20,000. That's going to change her world, not because people bought tickets, not because they're saying go Janice, which I hope they do. And I do want you to have the tickets, you know what I mean? But it's something else that we don't typically associate in the Western culture when we talk about changing our minds and advancing our minds. And there's a tolerance point because sometimes it doesn't feel, for me, I've had quite a number of times it hasn't felt good at all. And some of that is a weakness in counting my blessings, which is a real thing, or gratitude, for if you prefer that terminology. But it's also sometimes you got to slog through the mud to get to the beautiful grassland or whatever is life enhancing for you. And I think that's as far as I can go with those points.
Two things came up for me in that. If we're talking about that we are in the process of evolving, it's like a paradox, or it is a paradox. And Janice, see if this registers for you, because it's your experience that I'm stimulating. So part of because I know Janice and we're both strategists. So there's part of knowing that the template of humanity is not celebrating our ability to say no more. So there is a knowing that probably 10,000 people saying no more probably isn't a realistic idea. So there's that side in the secular world. But then in the sacred world, there's a muscle inside of our ethers that hears 10,000 people screaming no more. That ability to live in those two energy systems at the same time,
right?
I'm saying is upon us. It's
Yes.
just upon us, which now makes things like yesterday in the thread was shocking, the amount of videos and conversations going through. Also my European thread, it's shocking the level of conversations, both what's wrong with them, what's wrong with it, what's wrong with me on one side, and oh my God, we're awakening up into the next greater whole that has nothing to do with anybody being wrong with anything. And it's this interesting pull and the paradox that is going on right now. And of course, for me, I get hyperstimulated because when I'm in these moods, when this channel level is coming through me, I am really pulling to move everything to the next greater whole, and I can't help myself. So then we have this other phenomenon going on, not just with the people in this cultural community or the field of Tantra, but I'm getting it from, I do prophetics every year, and you all know this, but I want to say it to the audience. I have never done prophetics except once a year in January of 2020, in January of every year for 20 years. And I had this off thought in January that everything was going to start moving so fast, people would want it in June. And then all of a sudden, I had 10 people ask me if I was going to do them in June. And I was on Facebook and I said, if one more person asked me, I get, the old thing about the horse. If one person says you're a horse, don't listen. Two people says, so you put the horse, start whinnying, What I was
Put
really
on that saddle.
is in all the years that I've worked, the fact they wanted a prophetic,
Yep.
which is clearly their direct link with who they are as a source of creation, a prophetic, not a reading
Yes.
about their secular lives, but who are they to creation? That is just stunning. That is like off the charts stunning. And that is that 10,000 people. That is that, because it's happening in a region of human consciousness that hasn't been drawn to, I am part of the prophecy of the new realities.
That's right. That's right. If you're aware that you're saying no more, it's this much before you become cognizant of what you're saying yes to. And that you're part of forming yes.
That's well
But
said.
we're at the no more, which is still in for and against, and less in like we're just there.
We're less in both hand. Yeah.
And it's gonna
Right.
flip very
Yeah.
soon, which is another reason that makes it so important to have tools, but it's not just mental tools, it's strategic, structural, phenomenological, beingness tools like the templates to help you shift your entire, because your beingness doesn't just live in here, it's in how you set up your living room, it's how you all that.
It's more than that. What Jess and I were talking this morning, and for those of you that are not in the Magicians of Self, one of the tipping points we're at right now is how the attention is paying attention. So one of the conversations is a definition of ritual. A definition of ritual is gathering the sacred in secular time on behalf of the sacred having a place. And something had happened in the house that looked like, on one hand, purposeful to lose weight and get healthy. And I said, well, what if it's ritual? What if it's a ritual of gathering the sacred on behalf of life and having it live in time in the house? So that making that drink or not eating sugar is no longer managing the secular linear plane.
Wow.
To reclaiming the sacred. But this is actually, I gave an example, but this is now what the human mind is capable of, going out into the ethers and gathering back the feminine, gathering back the sacred, gathering back the deeper, broader, wider emotions. Like love is a deeper, broader, wider, and we're at this edge, and there's a riving going on that, for me personally, since I have a 12,000-year-old memory, I remember when we got right before this moment, and that which goes against life won. And I suggest that every human being has something like that. But the beauty of this particular species is we learned. We learned to say not again, not just no more, but not again. And I really think and I want to add one more thing since I'm on my roll. So one of the things, because it only happened, this interview was recent. It was like 5 hours, but I mean, it went out. It's recent. It's not like 2019. And Joe Rogan kept saying, I want to hear what people said. So there were different areas of their conversation, which I have a relationship with, like the 12th planet and Stitchin and things like that. So I'm just writing in the chat everything I know about what I'm relating to that supports what he's doing. I mean, I'm like, And then I came into us, like we'd ask people to say what they want to look at, say what they're paying attention to and create a world. And nobody had put anything in. And it just made me crazy because that's not participation. That's listening for an authority outside yourself, not bringing your own authority, your own sovereignty, the thing. And it isn't about the people didn't do that. I'm not making them wrong. Well, I am because I'm in my shitty mood. But it's not ultimately that. It's more that stop. It's more like yelling at the mechanism. Stop doing this to the people. Get out of their brain. Let them be their own source. Let them be share their discovery. And and people were writing crappy things in the chat, at post the recording, opinionated, which is what we get to, right, wrong, opinionated. And all of a sudden there was a shift in the chat as I'm writing all this information. Like somebody said, "Where'd you get that information?" And then I gave him the 12th planet. "How did you know that?" And it started, and it was like I was an alien being that was not following the rules and was actually collaborating with the two men that were talking on behalf of what they were talking about. And that's why we're trying to keep CreateAWorld going, because Janice and I promised creation. This would be an activity of collaboration. And sometimes it's like, piss off. Why bother? Do you know? All right, now, all right, I can breathe again. Over to whoever. Go ahead, Deb. You were trying to interrupt me, or Janice, somebody go.
I'll just say real quick, I used to have a sign when I was teaching in a classroom. I had a sign in my classroom that said, "Learning is not a spectator sport." And that's, and living is not a spectator sport. But, for many of us, especially in Western cultures, we've been enculturated to be the spectator. And I suppose one of the things that's shifted with the rise of social media, while there's certainly downsides to it, is that it does pull people a little bit out of their spectatorness. Now, there's still, these comments and everything that they can put up, whether they're, life enhancing or not. There's still a little bit of a shield around it, but I think what we're saying today is each and every one of us has to be actively involved in the conversation, contributing whatever it is that's ours to contribute, without judging. Well, they know more, or they said it better, but who am I? I mean, it really,
or they're right or they're wrong, or they're right or they're wrong. Right. Yeah. Really powerful. I think I just can't get over it's May, and I'm going to be doing these prophetics in June. And in all the years I've been me doing what I've been doing, I've never felt this edge, ever, ever. And like, I do think there's going to be a collapse in the next half a year. But now it looks like it's possible that as the collapse collapses, the rebuild is happening the build is happening at the same time. But I think I don't know, whatever it takes for people to find people that give people courage to say their own cravings, their own desires, their own awakenings, wherever they can find a platform to collaborate and trust their own wisdom. In the Ibrahim Karim biogeometry, it blew my mind that in the Egyptian culture, the ancient Egyptian culture, that is the architecture science of this work that they do. They actually called it's called BG3, but it's the missing aspect is the energy fields. And like we've lost the energy fields. It's all in our head. It's all mechanical in our mind. But those missing energy fields have a science, and the Egyptians called that science wisdom. And that's in each of our heads.
Yep. And I think listening to both of you just now, I think the exact tipping point of this morning is to put more energy on talking about, using the word. In the beginning, there was the word that forms reality, of what is rising. Because as you were talking, I was thinking about how many times I've engaged with, people in my regular life or when I was seeing clients, and, you know, part of the assessment process is always, well, what are your strengths? For me, anyway. What are your strengths? What are you good at? And I find it kind of, no, that's not a good sentence. So that was always the hardest part
What's
in
that?
stating their strengths.
Mhm.
And then when I'm out in regular life and I see someone, knowing that they're a genius too, and they're beautiful and magnificent, has always been the hardest part. And I gave in to the
It
backlash.
is always the hardest part.
Well, I'm getting there.
I'm gonna interrupt you just as a inside of what you said and then keep going. Because I've had a really strange thing happen since they fixed my heart. And I actually asked a woman who I always used to go to when I was scaling, remember me in scaling? Because I knew I'd gone outside of anything I knew myself to be. And when she was talking to me, she said, "Well, what do you know about yourself now?" And I said, "I know I'm brilliant." But I knew it was coming from another place.
Right.
It wasn't coming from trying to be identified that way. I knew I was
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. I didn't need anybody to know but me. And I realized in my ability to say that something had cracked the code.
That's right.
That's all I wanted
That's
to.
right. That's right. And it may take a while because, as some of you know, a lot of you know, I'm studying to take the big exam for getting licensed. And then there's another little exam and the administrative part. So I am shocked at so much. The point is that they want everybody to have the same foundational knowledge. I've encountered at least one statement last night that was, in my mind, blatant systemic racism. And even allowing for, okay, they were trying to focus on one element of human experience, they still could have added a half a sentence that said, and this relates to this, go back to that section or look up this. In other ways that things are so redacted or they break their own research rules, because had it beat into me during the writing my dissertation that good academic research and quality academic engagement, you don't use research that's older than blah 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 unless there's a point. You focus your research on what's within, I think they said, the last 10 years, unless there's a reason for it, and there's plenty of reasons, but then you say it. Most of the research cited in this stuff is 20 years old or older. And it's put in there. And some of it I understand, like talking about Freud's stuff, some of the truly foundational elements of what we're calling the field of psychology. Well, that's one thing. But research in support of much more modern takes on those things. And I'm thinking, this gets out into the popular world. and is treated as the truth about human beings.
And we absorb that. We
Yeah.
absorb that without even being conscious of the fact that we've absorbed it all.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I
So
want
focusing on this piece, what you just said about brilliance, I'm present to. It's also time to shift our language because people don't know how. They hit up against their magnificence. If they don't know how to live it, they don't know how. In the face of structures that would have Janice give up her show, that would have whatever that man's name was, that said, well, it's all lovely that you women got a college degree. Now go home and raise babies, be barefoot and pregnant. So that's that.
there's a comment that that was put on the chat that I'm so impressed by, and this is actually the key element of what we're trying to get at. And somebody wrote, I was really upset with myself that I had no way to respond to what question I was going to ask or what my inquiry was about. And that really is the key element here. It isn't something's wrong with people, like I said.
Yes.
It's where the brain has stopped
Yes.
frigging functioning.
Yes.
The very fact that someone can be frustrated or upset with their brain is probably the best friggin' news on the planet.
Yes. Yes.
And I had that thing. What have they done to my brain, Jane?
Right.
What have they done to my brain? Yes, something got done to our neural pathways.
Yes.
Very fact that you'd be frustrated because you can't think or collaborate or bring a question or have a view cracks the friggin' code. And that's the self.
Yes.
That's the key to self-awareness. And that is the no more. And that is the never again. Thank you.
And now find what works, whoever that was. Find what gives you the next toehold up the mountain, the next piece of access to your brain, your cognition, yourself. Rearranging your furniture, I don't care. Learning to write the templates is highly recommended, but there's lots out there that's becoming more and more publicly accessible.
And even to reply to that Facebook post to say, I don't know. I don't know. But then you're putting yourself in the conversation.
That's right.
And it is why we keep doing this. I mean, I'm like everybody else. I'd like to eat chocolate and watch shows, and I love sci-fi. I could probably stay stoked on sci-fi most 24/7. But the keeping bringing myself back to this is the code we have to crack. Self-awareness, self-declaration, self-wisdom is the next recursion. It isn't the answer to our problems. What I mean is, it isn't about looking for the answer to our problems. Where the problem is complete. There's not the problem now. Every layer of society, every system is the problem. The whole damn thing's the problem. And the only way out is our brain, is the ability to think what keeps drawing our attention. That's what I wanted to say. What keeps bothering us. Unfortunately, the first system is, how do I fix it? But if you can go, what's the bigger picture? What is missing that gives me life? What is missing that would have me have hope? What is missing? Like, it's almost like what is missing might be the most foundational question that we can ask ourselves, because it's certainly not what's existing. And I know that's why watching Terrence and Joe I came off that so high. It was like my drugs. I was so high to hear here was another understanding of how we did not have to pollute the air, how we could actually, I think it's Elon Musk, but I could be wrong, how he wants to get this one patent, Elon Musk, because they can clean up space debris. This one thing could clean up space debris. And it was another thing when we were ignorant and we didn't have systems that could clean up the ocean or clean up the space debris. But this is a man saying that he has proved with no damage to the atmosphere or to very qualitatively simply done, he could clean up the space debris. There's another young man that has a very specific thing about he could clean up the ocean. So what's and they said it's greed and the monetary wealth. Everybody go read the book Debt, which Kaya, who's actually listening today, gave me the book or listened to it. It's all about how we judge our value by our financial bank account. And so doing something on behalf of, we could all breathe better and we could all be dancing in the moonlight, having a gay old time is unheard of. Unheard of. That's why, Deb, this thing you said about I can't tell you what it's like. Something shifted. I don't have to have any recognition outside myself. I'm just kind of startled. I'm as brilliant as I seem to be. To me, do you understand?
Yeah.
And that's what self-awareness is. That's the reclamation of awareness. And just to add to that, is that one of the reasons I made the phone calls is then I have this dead space I get into where I can't explain it in normal terms. But I'm beginning to suspect that we're all having that there are these absent times. They're like we're absent. We're no longer present because we're no longer somewhere new. We're not somewhere new, but we're no longer where we were. There's like this gap. Only I experience, because I'm so highly cellularly sensitive, I can really experience it. Like I'm like, oops. And so I have this practice she gave me yesterday. I was driving with Kevin, my god dog, and I'm looking at Kevin, who's, by the way, when he sits in the seat, his heads and I are the same level. So it's just like looking at a person. And I looked over at him, I go, Kevin, I'm here. Because my personality needed to recognize I actually was there in that seat, driving that car. And the ability to recognize there is an I am that, and where I am that is presence. It has something to do with being present. And being present is different than coping. And whatever the mindset is, and whatever the damage that's been done at an evolutionary is forcing an evolutionary drift towards being present. And I just got a text right before I came on here. Somebody in Turkey asked me what to do about his son who is being bullied. And I texted back, this is a long conversation to him, I said, but it starts with how capable is your son of simply being present with no reaction to what he's being bullied by. And then maybe the bully just needs somebody to listen. But the gap is what we're in. It's not like a solution to the boy 9-year-old not being bullied. It's that we have this gap of no response, no capacity to respond. But if we know, like in the chat, that we have no capacity to respond, guess what our consciousness does? It starts working on responding. That's why.
Right place.
Yeah, go ahead.
From the right place. Because you said something that kind of pinged me. One of the things, just to use the templates as an example, is we spend a lot of time teaching people, saying this is not about fixing your problems. Like there's this, and still do, and there's a mindset there. But isn't it interesting that Terrence Howard comes up with ways to fix some problems, and they're not being instantly sought and grabbed. So that demonstrates that that gap between, it isn't really about solving the problems. That slice of mentality or mindset, it's about accessing being, from which his inventions, and I'm not saying we don't need to solve the problem of, clean energy, good energy, all the things you named and more. I'm saying the mindset of fix the problem leaves out the beingness that would actually access the solution and apply it, activate it.
Well, it would make us we would have to want it.
Yeah.
That's the craving. We would have to crave free energy. We have to crave delight. We have to crave being brilliant. We have to crave being the magic of ourselves.
Yep.
This is what got taken from us.
Yes.
This is what we're evolving out of. Janice, we
Yes.
4 minutes. You're always great at completion.
So again, the challenge in front of us is being, right? And then I mean, we talk a lot about being in the field of Tantra Mat, but that is the challenge, because when you are in being versus doing from a place of thinking there is a problem to fix, when you are in being, that's when you can experience your unique and essential connection with creation. That's where you can hear what is and isn't yours to do, and feel into that. I mean, if you really give yourself the opportunity to just be still and just listen, it's amazing the information that will come to you. And it's learning to identify the voices that are speaking. So for me, every time I would, hear, well, your show isn't good enough, and you don't, blah, 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 blah. I now am at the place where I can recognize that is not creation speaking to me. That is institutional structures that would seek to have me turn off my brilliance. Because there's a whole lot of people out there that wouldn't want me stirring the pot. There's a whole lot of people out there that don't want me filling women with this crazy idea that they get to live their own lives authentically. But then I also, again, when I am in being and I have this experience where somebody says something to me and I go, oh, well, that's creation saying, and this is why you're going to keep doing your show. And when those things happen, I feel paradise. So that's the other thing, right? When I hear all these, oh, don't do your but and don't you're in, it's not, that never feels good. It always feels like crap. And when somebody says something to me and I'm like, oh my God, this is why I'm doing my show, I feel great. I feel alive. And so that's what we want you to do is follow where the life is. While you have to continue to stand in the midst of all of the unworkability. What we're asking of you is not easy, but it is simple.
Phenomenon. The other thing she said to me yesterday that I'll complete with is she said the greatest strategy any human being can ever take on, regardless of the level of the trauma, is one's own vulnerability. So thank you, Janice, and thank you, Deb, and thank you, everyone who's here. And thank you for being with each other on the chat, not just being with us on the screen. It's important. It's an important moment in time for all of us. Take precious care. Let's create a world.